gets to talk first? Yeah, he immediately pointed at you.
Hey, how are you? He did that,
If you
yeah.
don't mind, just clip it on someplace easy. Do you have a pocket in those slacks?
I do.
You can just throw that in your pocket? Okay, but just try to be sure and trade that off when
I will, yeah. Our problem is there we kind of play off each other, but I'll try at least get near him.
That's perfect.
So maybe that will.
It'll pick you up.
Okay. And am I already on?
You're
Yes.
already
okay.
on. Yep. Thank you.
I can't buy good sunglasses. I'm afraid.
To open up this spot for if we have a special student who misbehaves, they can have this.
A misbehaving student. Your timeout day.
I told him that we have a tendency to like play off of each other. So if we will, I just said we'll try and stand next to each other when we do that so that we don't.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Hey, at least it's much cooler in this one than it was yesterday. It took me until I got back to the office and I was like, oh, I'm hot. Yeah. Well, at least we don't have anything across from us or. So I guess if this is the red card we're supposed to put in, that we have to like shove the entire thing under.
Stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like glued down. I would assume so. Is it really? Well, I figure at 1 o'clock we'll start. And
It's 1 o'clock. I'm looking under.
no, we've still got a couple of spaces. We even have and we've got one right there. Yes. Well, no, probably not, but. How are you?
Thank you. How are you?
Good. Doing well, thank you. I think we have another desk. Well, we've got one in the middle there, and then I think we are.
Anybody did not get an 8-pin, you want 8-pin.
And I think we are full.
Trying to lighten the load so I can carry them out. Anybody else?
They're good pens. They actually write. Good ink. Oh, absolutely. Well, you know how sometimes like people will buy cheap pens and you try and write with them and they either like crumble or they don't work. So if I'm going to buy them, we even have.
There's some sticky pads up here. The brochures that are up here
There you
talk
go.
about what we do, the courses that we offer, how to get a hold of us, all the things that we do. Everything we do is free.
Hi, how are you? I guess we're going to start because I don't know.
Let's rock on.
Okay, so this is I know they're live streaming this, but I have no idea whether it's actually running or not. So we're just going to start and see what happens. So my name is Jennifer Newell, and I am the director or the program manager of the School Security Institute. We are a division of the Oklahoma Office of Homeland Security. I actually retired as a Norman police officer after a little over 21 years to take this position. As a police officer, one of my favorite things to do was work in the schools. And it wasn't just because I had a daughter in the schools, but I liked walking into the elementary schools where I walked out with snot on my pants because of the little mucus monsters. And I laugh, it was, you know, to show appreciation to my teachers. That was my 8th grade science teachers. He always called children mucus monsters. So it's stuck with me. But you literally would. You'd walk out. We wore blue uniforms, so you'd walk out with like little snot prints on your pants, and you're like, I'm okay with that. You walk into the middle school, and of course they know everything, and then you go to the high school where they not only know everything, but they don't need anyone. I enjoyed that. But to have an opportunity to work with schools across the state has been just amazingly rewarding for me. It amazes me on a daily basis what you guys, everything that you have to do, because what I would love to do is saying we don't have to worry about crisis response. You guys should just be able to worry about teaching your kids and making sure that they are as successful as possible. That's really what you should be able to worry about, but unfortunately we don't live in that world. So today we're going to be talking about crisis response. We're going to do a little bit of a tabletop exercise. Definitely have plenty of time for questions. We want your feedback, but I'm going to let Gary introduce himself with the, yeah, there you go.
I'm Gary Reddick, and I worked with Jennifer at the Oklahoma School Security Institute. If you'll remember, after Sandy Hook, the state of Oklahoma created a commission. It's called the School Safety Security Commission. We had educators and law enforcement professionals from across the state that came together with Governor Lamb, and we talked about what we could do to make schools safer. This was one of the products of that meeting. There were several things that we recommended. This was one of those things. So I retired from law enforcement. I've been chief of police a couple of different places, and was going to go work cows and not do anything for a while, and this came along, and my wife's a teacher, and I've got a son that is also an educator, so trying to keep schools safe is very important to me, so I came on board and was glad to do that. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is the services that OSSI provides. Everything, as I said, that we provide is free. Come in. It's standing room only because, unless there's some chairs over there, little ones. The timeout chair in the corner is for you, if you would like to come in.
Okay, so we're going to start. I thought he was going back there to like sit on his lap or something like that. I was like, well, okay, we're just a friendly group, aren't we? That's okay. I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. Yeah, no judgment. We're good. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do is talk a little bit about what the Oklahoma School Security Institute is. And I would like you to pay attention to, obviously he said we were created in response to Sandy Hook, but the second line says what? Free. Everything that we do is free. And yes, I know it's confusing because normally if the government is behind it, it's going to cost probably more money than what it should. And it's going to be really complicated, but everything that we do is absolutely free. We are here, we were created as a resource for schools. And we not only work with our public schools, but we work with our private schools as well as technology centers. We've even done some kind of higher education depending on what their resources are. But everything that we do is 100% absolutely free. So please remember that. So some of the training that we offer is one, working on creating an emergency operations plan. What we find, first I want to tell you just a really quick story. So when we started, I came on in December of 2013. They came on February and March of 2014. But the office had set up some training in emergency operations planning through FEMA. Has anybody ever been to FEMA training? Okay. It's a lot of jibber jabber, isn't it? There's a lot of words, and you're thinking, you're telling me this in like 50 words, and you could say it in 5. Could we please bring it down a little bit? And we found out that training, that's exactly what it was, is there was a lot of FEMA jibber jabber. It was 2.5 days long, which we knew would not be possible for school administrators to step away from the building for that long and really have their attention. So we found Readiness and Emergency Management for Schools, which was actually created by folks from schools. It's with all the FEMA information, without the FEMA jibber jabber. Because what we were finding out is that many schools, and I'm not judging you, please know I'm not judging you, but many of you have the flip chart, right? How many of you have the flip chart? Okay, I'm going to guess there's more, but everybody's afraid to raise their hand. Okay. What we call the flip chart in our office is the oh crap guide. Because it is created to get you through about the first 5 minutes of whatever happens. It is a great tool to have in classrooms, to have in open areas, so if somebody needs a quick reference guide with phone numbers or what to do, that's a great option. What we need, though, is a true emergency operations plan that deals with before, during, and that really, really critical after time. What are we going to do to recover from that situation? So that is one of the classes that we offer, and we actually have it down to about a 4-hour course. The State Department of Education invited us to do some training with them called crisis team training. We made that part of it, so if your school has not attended that, we would love to come and do that class for you. So it ends up being about a 6 to 7 hour class, but I think it's worth your time. But yeah, emergency operations plans, again, we see kind of that oh crap guide get you through that first 5 minutes, but we need to see the plan that kind of helps you prepare, figures out what you're going to do during, and then what it's going to look like for recovery after the situation. So we also do a program called Protecting Our Future. This is somewhat of an introduction to bad things that have happened in schools. Though the only thing that you have to face is not an active assailant, there's a lot more things going on in schools, but it's something that we can learn from. We can look at a situation, and I think we talk about probably between 8 and 10 different situations depending on how much time we need, and we look at the lessons learned. We don't want to make the same mistakes, and in no case do we ever say, if the school would have just done this or they did this wrong. Every time they were doing exactly what they had been trained to do. What we're trying to say is, have you ever thought about doing this instead of what they did? And again, hindsight is always 20/20, but we think it's very, very important. But protecting our future, we also talk about kind of the top 10 mistakes that we see in schools. And most of those are not going to cost you any money. It's a matter of changing culture. It's a matter of changing some policies and procedures. So we have that quick. And sometimes, how many of you are administrators in this room? Okay, so sometimes, and I will say it both ways, sometimes teachers are really concerned about something and they don't feel like their administration is supportive of it. And so us coming in and teaching that class can be very helpful. On the other hand, we've had administrators who said, I'm so frustrated because I feel like my teachers aren't taking this seriously. Having this training and we don't do it just to freak everybody out. We don't show bloody pictures or anything like that, but we get people to start thinking about what would you do. As police officers, the mantra, from the first day that I started the academy, the first day I was in field training, their mantra to us is our job is to go home at the end of the day. You guys need to accept that same mantra, because the reality is sending the students home safe at the end of the day is not your only priority. I want you guys to go home at the end of the day. And it's going to be better for the students if you get to go home at the end of the day and come back the next. And so when you're thinking about being prepared for all sorts of different things, I want you to keep that in mind. The teacher and student sexual relationships, recognizing the issue. I'm going to let Gary talk on this because that's his training.
Isn't it sad that we have to have training on that? Yeah, we actually approached State Department of Ed and said, if there were topics that we could help you with, what would you recommend? And they said, well, can you do something on this? And I said, okay. If we develop this, where do we start? What would we start with? And they said, start with the law. I said, which law? They said, the law that says you can't have sex with kids. I said, really? That's where we got to start? And you know, amazingly enough, it's that and the reporting concept that seems to be the most problematic. And the reason that that's true, one of the slides that I show shows a recent study that just occurred a couple of years ago. They did this study of over 800 teachers, and they said if you saw something between an employee of the school district and a student that made you feel uncomfortable, how many of you would report it? And 44% of those polls said we would not report it. And when asked why, they said, because if we're wrong, we ruin the life of a teacher. And what you don't hear people say is, if I'm wrong, I ruin the life of a child. So this is something, there's a lot of cultural issues, a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. So we took this on, and we do it in a couple of hours for school systems and faculty and staff to try to learn to look at the signs of grooming, a lot of the things that are unique to the education environment with regards to the inappropriate relationships that are occurring. Another one that we do is training for school bus drivers. School bus drivers are required to have so many hours of training every 2 years. And so if you're looking for professional development training for school bus drivers, we do that in 1 or 2 hour blocks. The school response to active assailant is kind of compared to the protecting our future. It's just different in that we emphasize the response of education professionals on how to deal with the active, violent intruder on your campus, what you should be thinking about. These are professional development topics. So if you're looking for professional development hours, if you said, hey, I got an 8-hour day, Gary, but I can give you 45 minutes. I'll take it. I'll take it. I will talk about whatever you want me to talk about in 45 minutes, the best we can. I know you've got, curriculum issues, you've got administrative issues, you've got bloodborne pathogens and mental health, all those different things that you're required to take every year as part of professional development. But if you're looking for PD hours, let us help you with that. Like I said, everything that we do is free. And we can help you with some of those things.
Which one are we talking about? Sorry.
Tip line.
Okay, so the Oklahoma School Security Tip Line was actually created in response to what we heard from educators in the School Security Commission. Our understanding is the State Department of Education had a tip line. The problem was it was very expensive for the state, and they were looking to cut costs, and I can't blame them, and I don't know that it was actually that effective. One of the issues is you would call and it would be routed out of state, maybe out of country, and then they would route it back to the school district, but then it would go to a single phone and a voicemail would be left, and then you would have to count on that the person who's supposed to check that would remember to do it, or they were in the office, or they didn't get caught up on something else. And so it wasn't the information that was being shared, if it was being shared, was not being shared in a very timely manner. Because I actually think about 3 years ago, right after we started, we were hearing from schools that they were still able to call the tip line that was created by SDE and leave a message. And it had probably been taken offline. I mean, the state had quit paying for it probably a year before that. So they're thinking that they're leaving information, and that's not happening. So that's a problem. So with our funding, we actually decided to run the tip line through the State Fusion Center, which is located in the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. The main reason why that's a good thing is because it's monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is never a time where somebody is going to get a voicemail. During regular business hours, if somebody makes a phone call, a Fusion Center analyst will call, they'll take the information. They'll make the decision whether it's something that just needs to be emailed out, or do we need to start making phone calls, and that will happen in the middle of the night as well. At that point, we have our OSBI communications officers will actually answer the phone. So, or if a tip is submitted online, there's about 5 of us who immediately receive a notification that something has come in. There's a couple of people who are tasked with immediately looking to see what the tip is, and again, deciding, is it something that we need to start waking people up for, or is it something that we can, the schools can deal with the next day? One thing I want you to remember, we do not follow up with you to find out how you handled the situation. That's not our job. We're not a regulatory agency. Sometimes OSBI may follow up because they may have the person who the tip is about linked into something that's happening on the public side. And so there just may be some more conversation about saying, maybe how can we work together to either make this stop happening, maybe get resources for that kid, something. And I think it was right before last school year, the State Department of Education approached us and said, could we start referring bullying issues to the tip line? We wanted to be really careful with that because we are not in the business of bullying education. There are people out there who are much, much better at it than we are. And we knew that that would be more than a full-time job on top of already what we're doing. But we wanted families, we wanted school members, because we receive tips from family members, from students, and from school staff. And we want them to have a place where they can report information when they're frustrated with something, because sometimes they've reported it and they don't feel like they're getting anywhere with it. But we had a situation where it was being dealt at the building level, but it had not ever been shared with the administration. Well, when that tip came through, the district administrator became aware of it and was able to kind of step in and help a little bit more and actually clarify some information so the person who was making the tip understood that what she believed to be happening wasn't really happening. But we have received tips that actually have been sexual assaults. We have seen tips from bullying that has become so severe where a kid lost his front teeth. We had one, and I very rarely ever talk to the reporting person, but if there's a question or if we're trying to get more information or if there's a concern, in this case, the reporting party called. She wanted to remain anonymous, but we knew with what the situation was the minute we shared the information that it wasn't going to be anonymous. So we wanted to make sure the mom was prepared for that. So she's telling me this story, and what the situation is there is a young lady, her daughter, who is being encouraged to commit suicide by another student who was well connected in the school. And the student was going as far as saying, "I'll bring a knife from home." On top of those issues, the young lady's father had committed suicide about 6 months prior. So of course that increases the likelihood that she's even thinking about it. And the mom was just beside herself because it was a rural area. It wasn't like you could remove from Union School and go to Tulsa Schools or Broken Arrow. She didn't really have a lot of options. And what we have seen sometimes is, and this isn't a gotcha thing, it's just sometimes we get in our little comfort zones and we think we're doing a good job handling something. Sometimes when a little bit more light is shed on it, meaning that other people outside the district are aware of it, sometimes it pushes people into maybe asking more questions. But like I said, we don't judge, we don't ask what you do, we simply are the flow through. So, but I think that tip line has been very, very helpful. I don't want to say we're getting thousands of calls a day, but you're participating in the tip line whether you know it or not, because you're reporting drills to our office, which is a lovely segue to the next bullet point. We are the office that you report your security, your tornado, other, and fire drills to. And one reminder, if you are responsible for reporting your drills and you saved a link directly to the drill, that drill is no longer valid because we take all of the previous year's drills down and we add 2017, 2018, which just blows my mind that we're even talking about those years. So you will need to go in. If you'll just bookmark our website and then go into the drills, that will be helpful to you and you'll run into fewer problems. So anybody have issues? And one of the things I want to remind you of is security drills are supposed to be done within the first 15 days of each new semester. We recommend, highly, highly recommend that you do not do them as a part of another type of drill. We had some schools, when we first started, we would receive a fax and it would show that they did their lockdown, then it was lockdown, intruder, tornado, and fire drill all at the same time. And I was like, really what you're preparing your faculty and staff and students for is mass chaos. So please, please don't do that. And then our final thing before we start doing the tabletop is risk and vulnerability assessments. Another thing that we offer for free. Have any of your districts participated in one of those? You know, okay, Gary, you had a lot of work to do, dude. Yeah. The idea behind that is we really try and work from a strength-based approach. We don't want to walk into your school and go, oh my God, you're doing it all wrong. We walk in and say, okay, this is what you're doing right, but have you thought about doing it this way? Or have you thought about changing policies and procedures? Sometimes what we suggest is going to frustrate staff a lot because sometimes it will inconvenience them. But one of the things that we like to state is that really what we want you to do is that everything is going to be about protecting your faculty, staff, and students. And so if it means inconveniencing people, we apologize for that. But we want you to go home at the end of the day, as well as your students, and sometimes we have to inconvenience people to accomplish that goal. We will give you best practice recommendations, but then we also say, okay, we get it. You don't have, you can't just run out and do a $5 billion bond to fix all these issues. So we're saying, let's say you have 10 doors that are unlocked, could you reduce it down to 5 or 3? And again, it may inconvenience some people, but in the long run, it's going to make you a safer school. And we look at, we look at all sorts of different things, not just safety and security, but we look at traffic patterns, because sometimes traffic patterns get all jacked up, especially at elementary school levels. Wow, because all the kids want to be picked up hand by hand and walked out to their little cars, and sometimes that can't be done without backing everything up. So we look at those types of situations as well. And we look at your policies and procedures, your emergency operations plan, and try and offer some information about that. So, any questions about risk and vulnerability assessments? Gary has plenty of free time. He really doesn't, but that's okay. He'll be okay. Okay, I'm gonna let you, the flippers over there.
How many of you have a policy or procedure in your school district that requires or mandates an employee of the district to report to the office when they have obtained or been served with a protective order? Most don't. It's one of the things we do when we look at a risk and vulnerability assessment. It's logistics. We're looking at your property. We're looking at how things flow. That's why we want to come during a school day. But we're going to take your emergency operation plan with us, policies and procedures, your student handbook. How many of you have a policy that says if a student leaves the campus without permission and then attempts to come back to the campus, that they're subject to search? Most schools will say, well, we do that. You know what? That's great. You need to have a policy on that. It needs to be in the student handbook. You send that home, so when the parent calls and says, what are you searching my kid for? You can't search him. Oh, yeah, I can. Yeah, it's under reasonable suspicion, and we define that. If you look in your student handbook, sir, you'll see that that's in there. It eliminates those problems, those complaints that occur. That's what risk and vulnerability assessments do. So if you're interested in those, again, I do want to say on the drills, we have the posters over here, not drills, the tip line. I've got a tip line poster over here. Take those. Take as many as you need for your school district. Post them up. We try to hand them out as often as we can. So when you leave today, if you don't have some for your schools, get those. We're going to give you a little bit of a scenario here. We're just going to walk through this. This is one of the things we do with the RIMS training, with the Readiness Emergency Management, when we're talking about emergency operation plans, and we're working with SDE to help you develop good plans to keep thinking about safety and security. This is just one tabletop we're going to do here in about 15 minutes. Doesn't take very long. 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon, school's in session. Temperature's about 80 degrees. You have heard weather reports from the day before. As you arrive at school, you know that the tornado season is here, and it's going to be volatile. There's probably going to be rain, thunderstorm warning. But is that uncommon in Oklahoma in April, May, June? No. That's what we tend to get used to. Yeah, it's going to be a thunderstorm. Tornado's coming. Let's all go out and look at it. That's what we do. Staff is monitoring the weather. Rain begins. Weather reports now indicate there is hail and heavy rain with the potential for a tornado in your county. Sirens have not sounded. Going back to the setting, would the setting prompt you to do anything at school? Would you discuss that with your faculty and staff? Would you talk? Would you put this on the web page? Would you begin to discuss different things as an individual? If you thought there might be serious weather, would you bring an extra change of clothes? Would you have anything that you would do differently for yourself? If your kids are not in the school, would you make arrangements for your children in case you were tied up at school due to bad weather? A parent calls to say that a tornado has touched the ground 20 miles west of your community. You confirm via our weather radio that a tornado has been spotted. Parents are now calling the office, probably ringing off the hook. What are we going to tell them? They're going to ask this question: should I come and get my child? Can I come and get my child? If I come and get my child, are they going to be penalized? somehow because the last hour of the day they've got a test or there's something going on. Sirens have still not sounded, but the Weather Service has issued a tornado warning for your area. Again now, is this a decision point for you here? We do have one here. Media has begun reporting tornadoes and damage to other areas of the community, to another community. The system is headed toward your school in your area. Parents are now arriving, and they want their kids. Okay? Now you have a tornado warning, and parents are showing up, and they want their kids. How many of you are going to say, take your kids and go? Can you take your kids and go? How many say, nope, once a tornado warning occurs and we're going to start sheltering, you can't have them?
What is your, and please remember that what does your district or building policy say? Not what you would do personally, but what you would do with those.
We had this happen just a few weeks ago, actually, at Ulaga. They've got a FEMA-built shelter, a very good one. And in the process of a tornado warning and a tornado scare, because that district has been hit before, they were moving students toward the shelter. Parents were showing up and saying, I want my kid. Come with us and go to the shelter. No, I want my kid. I'm leaving. What are we going to do? Are we going to get physical? Are we going to say, no, you can't have them? We're going to fight with them, wrestle them to the ground, jerk the kid up, run with them into the shelter? Chase me and get me if you can. Do you have a protocol? Do we train people? Do we talk about with administrative staff when people are calling saying, I'm coming to get my child. I'm coming up there. Change the scenario to something else where you say, look, don't come to the school. We have a violent event here. Someone's died. Don't come here. Will people, will they obey from the standpoint of secretarial staff or administrative staff? Sirens have still not sounded. We have a decision point. Are we going to do anything right here? At this point, the media is reporting that a tornado and damage has occurred west of you. It's headed your way. What are we doing? Is there a protocol? Anybody? What do we do? Nothing? School is normal?
We know you're out there.
Are you asking us if there's protocol or is there policy? Because
Either
we
one.
have protocol, but we don't have policy.
Okay. What's the protocol?
Move them into the safe area.
So we would go into a shelter-in-place response.
Yes.
That's what you would do. Does everybody agree that that's probably, at this point, we would probably initiate a shelter-in-place response? Whether you have the policy or not, that's probably what we would start thinking about doing. We're going to start moving. How many of you are comfortable with that response at this point? We're going to start moving towards shelter-in-place. Do you have adequate facilities? Have you designated shelters? A tornado shelter, the restrooms, interior rooms without windows, those places that you feel like are very secure. Okay, so that's what we're doing. The principal initiates the shelter-in-place response through the intercom. Gets on the intercom. We're going to shelter in place. Take your positions. Parents now are arriving, demanding to take their children out. That's going to happen. It has happened. It always happens. If you remember, we had Murraysville, Pennsylvania, several years ago. Kids were running down the hallway with 2 knives, and he's stabbing and cutting kids. Kids are calling their parents. This is what's happening. So-and-so's cutting people. People are dying. On and on and on. Parents are arriving as emergency responders are arriving, and they want their kids. And so when the faculty and staff and the security and the police were saying, we've got this under control, we have this person in custody, what was their response? Nope, don't believe you. My kid says this, and I want my kid. You have to be prepared for this. They're not going to be rational. You know this well as I do. People go absolutely crazy about their kids. They're not rational. Sirens have now sounded, and the weather report says tornado is possible. One teacher says, I'm leaving. My kids are down the street at the daycare. I'm leaving. Do you think that doesn't happen, folks? It does. It has happened. When 9/11 happened in New York and New Jersey, teachers left their classrooms, walked out. They were scared. Went and got their kids and went home. I've had teachers say, if this happens, my kids come first. I got news for you, and it's all bad. They're all your kids. As soon as you signed up for this, and you said, I am going to take your children from this community and put them in my classroom, they became your kids. You can't leave. All right. The principal's aware that a field trip was planned. It just gets better and better. Field trip planned, and they'd already left, but now the weather's gotten bad. They're going to a museum in Oklahoma City, and they're on their way back now. They really don't know what to do. The field trip sponsor has called the principal to say, I don't know what to do. Do I come back to the school? Do I try to outrun this thing? Do I stop and take shelter? It's bad. I don't know what to do. What are you going to tell them?
How many of you have a district policy that the bus would need to go to the closest district building?
How many have a policy that says the bus driver should take the bus to any facility, anywhere, or it's his call to take shelter? You know, a ditch, under the overpass, whatever, anything. So we're going to wing this as we go. See, that's just not good, folks. If I call you and I say, you're the administrator, tell me what you want me to do. You need to have thought this out.
How many have a policy telling them what they're supposed to do? Anybody? Somebody ready?
My wife's a teacher. She's been teaching for almost 40 years. You know what I know about teachers? You are concrete, sequential people. Tell me what the rules are. Tell me what you want me to do. Tell me what you expect, and I will do that. But we do not allow educators to think outside the box in an emergency. And let me give you some, that's one of the things I do in RVAs, on risk and vulnerability assessment. I've gone to places, and I just did this a few weeks ago. Hey, cafeteria manager, somebody's coming in the door here, and they've got a gun. What do? Well, we would lock the doors and shelter in place. Great, that's good. I said, but now they're in here. What do? Well, I don't know. I said, well, I see the glass door right here, and across the street is the police department. I see police cars over there. Could you run over there? She said, oh, no, I'd have to ask permission to do that. See?
So as administrators, this is one of the things that we really tried to work on, is please empower your faculty, staff, and students to survive. It may not always look pretty, and the reality is it may not always work out the way we want it to, but that situation to me is much scarier than them taking a chance on trying to get out of the building or go outside that little comfortable box we like to live in.
If the sponsor's calling in, let me give you something else that we recommend you look at on field trips, okay? Take 3 lists. Field trip sponsors are required to take 3 lists of every person, every adult, every child, 3 lists. You leave 1 list at the office. We're going to a museum in Oklahoma City. Here's a list of every human being that's going. I'm going to take 2 lists with me, because if we have a crisis, an emergency, and there are emergency responders there, they're going to want a list. And if I've only got 1 list and I give it up, I will never get it back. So I take 2 lists, and I hand 1 to the command post director, and then I keep 1. I can communicate with the command post. I can communicate with the office as they're calling. Is my child there? Yes. No. I've got the list. I know who's going. I know who's staying. I know who's being transported by ambulance. I know. Because if I give my list up, I won't know. I had this happen at a fatality accident where a bus was involved and a person was killed. And at the end of the day, I said to the field trip sponsor, where's your list? She said, I gave it to a fireman. I said, which one? She said, I don't know. There's about 50 of them around here, and they all look the same. We never did get the list back. Take 2 lists. Those are things that you can prepare for in advance, okay? Now, since a shelter-in-place response is in progress, is anyone going to answer the phones? No, because I want my administrative staff to go take shelter as well. So maybe we've put into place an automated response so that when you call, you get an automated response, but more than likely, you'll have no response. So now the parents are going to call the police department. I'm calling the school and no one's answering the phone. My worst fears have been realized. I've called, my imagination is running wild, I'm hearing tornadoes are on the ground and no one's answering the phone. So a police officer shows up and he wants to know why nobody's answering the phone. No, nobody's going to answer the phone. We're taking shelter. Do we have a plan for that?
I want to ask a question. And this is going to sound wild. Can everybody bar, you feel like you may be able to get out, okay. The reason I'm asking you to do this is because if you have not done that when you're in your own school, and if you're relying on cell phones as one of your methods of communication, that's information you need to know. I happen to have, my work phone has 0 service, no service. My personal phone has 1 to 2 bars depending on it. So again, you have to look at when you're talking about that plan and protocols versus an actual policy or procedure, make sure that we're thinking about communication as number one, because you can see in almost every one of these injects, communications is a huge issue. So if we have several people in here who don't have any service, then we probably need to rely on the people who do, and that has to be considered when we're talking about communicating with parents, students, administration, the district administration, whoever that will be.
In every critical incident, communication is the #1 complaint and the #1 challenge. After it's all over with, and you go back and look and say, what can you do better? What could we improve? What was the problem? What was the challenge? It's communication. So now you've got this guy shows up. What are we going to do with this officer who's just showed up? What do you think we might do with him? Hey, buddy, since you're here and people are coming in the school and we are sheltered in place and they're going to try to take their kids out and there's some conflict, could you think you could stay and try to help us convince people to stay here? Or if somebody's getting violent with us, you know, or upset because we're saying you need to shelter here in this bathroom, they say, no, I know where to go. I'm going to go over here. Do you think you could stay since you're here? Stick around. Communication issues include how we're going to communicate throughout this shelter-in-place process. If you ever watch the videos that we show for Plaza Towers, the principal at Plaza Towers and Moore that was hit where the 7 kids were killed, did an amazing job. She stayed on the intercom the entire time, telling people, the storm is coming, the roof is coming off now, things are happening, it's okay, just stay where you are, okay, it's over now. You know, and then she told them when they came out, when you come out of the building, this is what you're going to see. It's going to be bad. Let me tell you what you're going to see. She did an amazing job of communicating with people. This is a key component, is the communication part. What we're going to do in advance, what would we tell people in advance of this? That's what we're talking about in emergency operation plans from the prevention or mitigation component before. Well, in a student handbook, you might say, folks, when the tornado sirens sound, parents, once they sound and we go to a shelter in place, we're not opening the doors. You need to know that in advance.
Tornado drills. When would be a good time to re-educate your family members about your policy around tornado response and when they can pick them up and what your policies are? Tornado in March or September and March. To have it as part of kind of your back to school protocol. Because one of the things, and Gary and I have preached and preached and preached this, if we would communicate with our families in the same way that we would want to be communicated with, we can probably solve a lot of problems. There are still going to be those people that are going to be pissed no matter what. But probably 90 to 95% of your families, if you will just communicate with them with the same type of information that you would want if you were in their position, you're probably going to solve a lot of your issues. But you have to prepare in advance to be able to communicate effectively.
After 15 minutes, all employees and students, we're in a shelter-in-place response. We're where we're supposed to be, but the main doors of the building are open, blowing. Parents continue to enter. Electricity suddenly goes out. Backup lights are on. That's all that's operable now. So if you have voice over IP phones, they're dead. Your communication system is dead unless your backup includes a backup generator that will continue to run your Wi-Fi and your communication system. So communication of all kinds may be problematic. Do you have small transistor radios? That's why we say, look, maybe having a few portable radios is a good idea so you can communicate back and forth. Some of the issues here then, lights go out, it's dark. What are we going to do with kids? How do we assure them? What would we say to them? I always show a video whenever I do the Protecting Our Future video, and it's a video of Kristen Roig, who is a Sandy Hook teacher. And she does an amazing job. She's got about 16 kids in a closet, a bathroom, and she's setting them on the toilet stool, and she's putting them in her lap, and she's stacking them up. And they said, "What did you tell them?" She said, "I told them I loved them." Pretty amazing to think. She said, "I thought that was the last thing they were going to hear, and I wanted them to know." So what do we talk about these difficult topics with our employees to say, this is some of the things you can do to help keep your kids calm, keep them in place, special needs kids, autistic kids, all these different things. Tornado spotted, it's coming. What information can you share? How will you share it just before the storm hits? What actions will you take here? And now let me ask you this, once it's gone, once it's over, what is your recovery process? Where are we going to have school? Who says whether we're going to have school? If the school is damaged, if loss of life occurs, how do we reunite kids and their parents? All the different things that with recovery include counseling, not just for kids, but for employees, long-term counseling services. So just some of the things that you want to think about, and we'll help you with that. We're going to have, I think our next one is at Marietta. Yes. We have a seminar at Marietta. It's online with the State Department of Education if you'd like to attend that. And we'll do those throughout the year at different places throughout the state. You can come, be a part of that. We hope you do.
Gary, because we still have time, so I want to kind of go back. One of the things that, again, just talking about being prepared before, during, and after, and I thought this was really important. So we hear from, and you guys may have that person in your building. We hear from people, from your office administration, your office staff, and we'll say, if a bad guy comes in the door, what are you going to do? And they said, I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure I'm letting other people know what's going on so I can protect them. But I see myself as a sacrificial lamb. We don't want them to see themselves as a sacrificial lamb, because then they will be. That's the only thing that they're going to be thinking about. There's a ton of other things that they could be doing. So when we talked about, Gary had the inject about, would your staff be answering the phones? I'm going to bet money that they will still try to until you order them to get into a safe place. But you need to do that. They need to understand how important that is, because he talked about when Kristen actually, and if you've not seen that video, go onto the State Department of Education's website and find it. It's part of the crisis team training. Her story is, Moore is not the only school district in the state of Oklahoma to be hit with tornadoes, but that town has really been hit more than so many other places, and in a huge way. It's not just affected a small percentage of the population, it's affected half of their town. They do everything right. They continue to test, they continue to drill and prepare and change. Bad stuff still happened on that day. They lost 7 of their kiddos. But I can only imagine how much worse it would have been had those students, at the end of the day, when they got to see Mrs. Ashley and the principal saying, it's okay, we're going to find your parents, there's your parents, it's okay, and have the direction of the staff to be able to look to them. We need all of you to be there at the end of the day, so that when we figure out what the new normal is, that you can be a part of that. So we need your office staff, we need everybody to make sure that they're doing drills in a way that's going to prepare them for an actual emergency. I can tell you, the school that my daughter was going to, we were in a meeting. It was the Safe and Healthy Schools Committee. And imagine the surprise on my face, not only in the position of what I'm doing, this state position, but the fact that my daughter was at the school when a kid says, oh, the last tornado drill, our teacher told us not to worry about it because we were right in the middle of things, and so we didn't do anything. And like my jaw, because like Mama Bear is coming out. I'm like, what? You didn't do anything. And let me tell you why it's concerning already. It is more concerning because the Office of Emergency Management had sent Safe Schools 101 into the school to look at the areas that they were sheltering in, and a lot of people had been moved around. There were areas where they were no longer allowed to shelter, and they needed to make sure, they were doing the drill to make sure that everybody that they thought could fit would fit. And how many other classrooms went, oh, it's just not that important. This is a school that was hit by a tornado. School gets out at 4:05. The tornado came rushing through at about 4 p.m. when everybody is out on the playing fields, when you've got parents out there. Absolutely one of the worst times that anything could happen. Well, guess what, folks? Bad stuff happens at inconvenient times. So I want you to remember more, because we can't just bury our heads and put our fingers up and just hope that everything is going to be okay. If you have a protocol about when to take shelter, get it written down. Make sure that something is written down so that everybody's following the same rules. My favorite thing that Gary Ruddick says is it doesn't matter if your emergency operations plan is written on a napkin, as long as everybody has the same napkin. What we find is that not everybody has the same napkin. So thank you so very much. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. If there's anything that we could do, let us know. Our contact information is right there. Gary is bored. He has nothing to do. We want to make him busy. He really is not bored, but anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The CEU certificates.
We do, yes, I have the CEU certificates here, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
Yes. Thank you. And why is that door starting? The door's And I have a sheet here that if we run out of these, you can sign this. Thank you. Thank you.
One of the things that Christy talked about, she said, I had my cell phone.
For the LPC, the CEOs. Cool. Thank you for what you do. Keep doing it. That's a great question, and I don't have the answer for you. Thank you for it. I made an assumption, and I probably shouldn't have, but yeah. Thanks. Anybody else need LPC? And you've got a pen?